And yet another terrific interpretation. Our third out of three great orchestrations to help kick off our first day of scores for the final leg of the 2022 Orchestration Challenge, orchestrating the Prelude in G by Vasil Barvinsky. It's just so fun to see the outpouring of imagination and the experimentation with different approaches. So cool, and gives me so much to say and just so much to enjoy as I look through these scores. So, just as before, I'm going to be analyzing these backwards, starting with section E, and then jumping back to section D, and then jumping further back to sections A through C for these dotted brev / longa evaluations. And my reason for that is that I feel it just, like all of the new material, section E, which we have not analyzed at all so far, out of halfway through this massive pile of scores. I have not yet said anything about section E, and I've barely dug into section D with the brev level entries that we've been looking at for the past few weeks. So I feel it's better just to get me at my freshest, and then when we jump back to sections A through C, those parts, like people might already have figured out what I might have to say about certain aspects. So that way, it's just sort of a matter of priority. So let's start with this beautiful, enchanting scoring here. So, Alex, you're probably already thinking to yourself, Thomas is going to talk about extreme dynamics because he just did an article about them. And if you haven't seen that yet, it's on the website, orchestrationonline.com, and it's also on Patreon and the Patreon feed that you can check out, Alex. It's the same article, either way, that you can take a look at. And yeah, just a few little things to cover here. We'll get to this in a second, but what you should know is that essentially, although there's a tiny bit of very slow vibrato, just a very, very slight modulation of the timbre in clarinet playing, according to the thinking of some clarinetists. Okay, other clarinetists deny this, but according to some clarinetists, there is just a tiny bit of very slow vibrato and so on. But generally speaking, clarinet is considered to be a non-vibrato instrument. Like that slow shaping of the tone is not the same thing as the expressive vibrato of flutes and double reeds and so on. And by the same token, the brass are also considered to be non-vibrato. So this is a bit unnecessary. You do not have to say non-vibrato on clarinet and brass parts. Now, just to quickly review the concept of extreme dynamics, the system that I put forward, and that is that quadruple piano is essentially like niente, niente means nothing literally, but like some people say, oh, can you play that niente? What they really mean is just to play it absolutely at the very edge of audibility. And there are a limited amount of players who can do that. The clarinet players can do it, so this is all possible, like clarinet and bass clarinet, absolutely. Flutes, sort of, more in their lower register, right? See, so this is much more likely than this, like to just really get it down to that just before a whisper. And I would say the same thing for brass, actually, like in their middle register. So you could have had the horns and the trombones, just go down to real extremes. I'd say it's like it's a little strange the way you have these mixed you know, to different levels of softness. But who cannot really get down there to that quadruple piano, and that is the double reeds. They have, that is not the way that they shape their articulation and their, the overall shape of the note is not that kind of thing. Okay, strings can also get down there, and like so can harp, and so can like certain percussion instruments with really soft mallets and so on. But the like just the true niente instrument of the orchestra really is it's the clarinet family, right? So so I would say just like maybe you could simplify a lot of this just by thinking about triple P as being your softest dynamic, unless you were really, really calling attention to the fact that you could get your entire orchestra down to a whisper, right? And the thing about it is that you kind of aren't. Like right in the middle of this niente fadeaway, you have this beautiful gushing harp solo, and you have this melodic stuff happening in the string. So you're basically distracting from what might be breathtaking right here if you could get all the players to do it right. And the same thing is true here. Like you're bringing this down to, niente and triple P and so on. But then right in the middle of that, you have this stuff happening. So I would just say rethink all of this. Like make it easier on your players. If you are going to go down to a really soft dynamic, just make it triple P, right? So if you haven't read the article yet, pianissimo is extra soft. Triple P is as soft as you can play musically. So in other words, with everything about like nuances and tone color and all the other things attached to it, that is as soft as you can go before you start to lose that. Then with quadruple P, like down to niente, is just, you can get down to almost a whisper, but it's kind of colorless, right? And there's a lot that you really cannot do musically, and there are some instruments that cannot play that low. And then quintuple P, that would basically just be whispering, right? Just taking it would be like the more air than tone, or maybe not even tone, right? Or just like it would be more the sound of the bow sliding over the strings than the actual tone of the strings. Okay, so I think it's just a little exaggerated, right? So just bring everything down to triple P if you need to, right? And then I would just do the same thing with everything and just have these dynamics match up and so on, right? Maybe you could have triple P on your brass and just, pianissimo on your strings. Just to kind of get a balance there. All right, so like all that other stuff aside, let's talk about the actual scoring. All right, so you're starting out here placidamente, right, and you've got contrabassoon and bass clarinet in octaves, which is just it can be very beautiful. It's just very heavy. Even being really soft, it's very, very heavy. And then you're going diminuendo to triple P, and then out of that emerges the bassoons trading off. It's a cool decision. Maybe the clarinet is getting a little too soft, right? All right, and then here we go. Yeah, non-vibrato. It's like not necessary. There's no vibrato. I would say the biggest problem with this section right here is the risk that the upper background elements creep into the foreground too much. What if you started triple P and went crescendo and didn't even put anything in the middle? So in other words, crescendo to pianissimo, but you don't need to mark the pianissimo, and then back down to triple P. Right? What if you did that? Because here's the thing, is you're stating the melody in pianissimo at the same time that these instruments are at piano. So in other words, your foreground is just way too much in front. I would rather see these statements be at piano, right, rather than this whole fading in stuff, because you need to maintain the prominence of that lower part, right? Which is really important, and the harp could play out as well. So I would just say balance this a little bit so that it's more in the front. Watch out about adding a low, kind of a rock bottom low note that isn't part of the melodic curve. Watch out about adding bass notes and stuff, right? Because like what is happening below is like it's the melody below with a little bit of harmony, like a little bit of harmony in between, and the harmony above, right? So the more harmony, the more harmonic elements, the more bass lines and other things that you put into it, the more you distract away from that flipping on its head, right? So I like this yada dum dum. See, like it's like here. This is great. Da 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 dum, pluck 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 pluck, bum 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 bum. But I'm not so happy about this. Da da dum bum. You see, like right with these lines here, like you're not turning around. You're going higher, right? So like it almost requires more weight in the harp to make things work. And then, of course, pizzicato has a kind of a slightly deadening effect on the harp, even though you've got the harp an octave higher, right? So just you have to be careful about that. So like here you got solo viola louder than your harp. I mean, I think that they should work together in some way. Right, and then here, ya da 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 dum, there's an implied leap, right? So it almost doesn't quite come off, and I'll tell you the reason why. It's because you're putting the harmony, you're leaving the responsibility of playing this harmony here just solely to the harps, right? There isn't a D, C little line. It's all just flute, right? So why couldn't there be second flute in there going, D thirds, C thirds? Yeah. Not too convinced by by rolling an interval. Da-dun. I would rather write that out as a grace note, if that's what you intend, or if this is just an artifact that got stuck there because of copy pasting, or like selecting something and then typing R and then it turns into something else, and then you drop it and you add a slur and so on. So yeah, just maybe like a grace note is better, but rather than I mean, Stravinsky does this in in Rite of Spring, and I'm not convinced by it there, and it doesn't really show up in too many other places. All right, and then we're getting to da da da. Yeah, this is all really lovely. The way that this is scored, I love the bassoon, and here's an example of low flute working, right? So you just have to be careful that the English horn doesn't like everything is great until you get to the voice crossing, right? And then as this pushes forward, then I mean your second flute is sort of fading out anyway, but it's not this is not ideal, but this is fine against the bassoons. Make a hell of a clarinet part, though. Perfect. No chance that the English horn would do anything wrong to it. Yeah, and then this is all lovely right in here. I missed the harmonization under this last note. Perhaps you forgot to put it in. Da 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 da. And then what is this chord? This is like the harmony of the beginning of the piece, right? It's it's that yeah, but of course you are I mean, it's just how do I put this? Sorry, my brain is sort of going in circles with this. Yeah, so that opening G major 6 chord, right? I just feel like without putting this sounding E in context of the upcoming finishing harmony, there's this kind of feeling of incompleteness, right? There's this is foreshadowing, what happens in the piano score right here, right? So I feel like you're taking out an element of drama. It's sort of like, it's kind of like where like say Gollum, you know, like when he's just starting to basically just lose, just lose all patience with these stupid hobbits that he's helping to get into Mordor. And Sam says, you know what, like, I guess you've been, kind of digging around in the mud, but I suppose you don't like that. You don't mind that, And then Gollum says, like, very softly, well, I guess he doesn't know what we mind, right? It's like it's that kind of foreshadowing. He's going to do something horrible to them eventually, right? Set a huge spider on them. So, like, this is, of course, not the same dramatic meaning, but, it's the same thing, right? Like, without that harmony, I feel that, like, we're not really getting the whole story, right? Like, it's, it is the final resting place of the harmony, but it isn't the final part to the melodic phrase, right? Anyway, so that was just, but this is really lovely. The harp in here and the like taking basically in place of the roll, and the clarinet family working together. Now, why are these reversed? I don't understand. Shouldn't it be like that? And I don't understand why there's a tenuto, like a single tenuto note under. You sort of want just a momentary portato there. Yeah. Okay. So, like, the next part that I had a slight problem with is the sort of disjunct nature of the drop here, right? Not so much. I didn't really have a big problem with like matching up the low flute with the English horn, so long as like maybe you do some better dynamic matching here. Like if this is mezzo piano, diminuendo, then at least piano. Like if you want a little bit of a blending tone there, at least piano in the low flute, if not mezzo piano, just to try to join the colors together a little bit better. Okay, but like the fact that like this is a this is a sounding D. The next note would be B down a third, but you're playing B down a tenth, right? So it doesn't really feel like the line is flowing, is flowing one into the other. And the other thing too is just that this is so short, right? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really feel like I would almost want like a dovetailing note. So da da, which is taken over da da. I don't feel, I don't see how that's quite. I mean, it would almost be better if that note were not slurred. Da da. Right. Yeah. All right. So your mock-up was just really struggling making this sound clear. All right. So probably what I would say is maybe stay off of triple P, right? Triple P morendo. The morendo is going to go down to triple P, right? So triple P and then morendo on top of that with low double reeds is kind of a non-starter. With the clarinet family, it's fine, right? But okay, and then this is like non-arpeggiando morendo. So how can it morendo? How can it die away? Right? I mean, it can die away just because you plucked it and it dies away. But there's nothing that the player can really do to make it die away any more than it just naturally decays anyway. So it's an unnecessary sign, right? So morendo you would only give to something where the players really have the ability to make things softer and softer and softer and softer and softer, right? To really die away till there's nothing. That really, of course, is the at this soft of a dynamic, that is the that's the clarinet family. So probably best idea right in here is to go diminuendo down to pianissimo, and for this to come in at P, and then you can have the morendo afterwards, and then everybody can sort of die away together. So I would just like have them. So diminuendo to pianissimo, start at piano, diminuendo to pianissimo, and everybody else pianissimo, and then die away, right? So you have somewhere to start from so you can get softer. Anyway, like, not to spend too much time on this one section. I mean, like, there's a lot to it that really works great, and of course I'm just making suggestions, but it's a matter of like, how can we make your approach, your idea, your imagination here work even better, right? So how can we like take the overall concept of what you've got here, and and I feel that like that absolutely you can make it work. You just need to do some adjusting. All right, so let's jump back to the beginning of section D. Okay, so getting into this lovely complex scoring that we've got here. Just a few notes. Crescendo poco a poco. I think if you say this, you don't really need the dashed line. The dashed line sort of it starts to interfere, like in an orchestra part. Like the dashed line can be confused with an actual staff line or other. It's just kind of more clutter. I think that people will understand that if you say crescendo poco a poco like 5 or 6 bars before you have a forte sign from a piano or pianissimo, then I think that they'll be with you all the way through. And then just a matter of like adding the invisible crescendo if you've got some kind of if you want your mock-up to work, stuff like that, right? So I would just say and I don't think you need to put the accent on the crescendo poco a poco. Just crescendo poco a poco. It's fine. All right. Just keep it really simple. All right. There's a few things in here. I am not really convinced with about the way that the bass line is changing around in here. Like, what's going on in the original piano score? It's just F sharp, F sharp, F sharp, F sharp. And like the context of the changing harmony above it is what's thrilling, right? Now, when you are leading it in this direction and you throw in an E here, you're giving away the E that happens on the next page, right? It's like you are previewing it. So when it happens, it's not a surprise anymore, right? But if you were to go solidly from this, like if you were to stay on F sharp and then you go solidly from F sharp to E, right? Here we got one in the bass trombone, some more in the contrabassoon. But then you got like this emphasis on the C sharp and so on, and that is giving away the C sharp here, right? So, I mean, I really appreciate people playing around with the harmony and making some changes and making some adjustments and stuff. But like, in the end, how much is that changing, like the dramatic arc? It's just really like it's really kind of really getting in there and changing the whole DNA rather than just like the rather than the clothing or the the hair color or whatever. All right, but but I still really love the experimentation. So now one last thing here is. Did you notice that these were all half-step trills? That you like the mock-up played them as half-step trills, even though like they're we're obviously going into a place where like in the context of everything else that's happening, that really should be a trill from F sharp to G sharp, right? Because of the the everything going to like the key of B major, right? With the F sharp being the like kind of like the serving as the the pedal tone there. So like the way to get around this, I'm just gonna zoom in here. All right, it's really really simple. If you just go to your sharps and flats, oops, slid by them, in the cymbals, and if you just add a cymbal sharp over it, and then you could also like make it like mini, like a Q size or a smaller size. All right, this will after you've done this, it will trill to the sharp, right? And then like that will get rid of all the da 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 da. It should be da da da, right? Da da, So I would, you could just go through and fix all of those. You'll end up losing some vertical space, that's for sure. That you already are kind of here, right? To make things work. But anyway, so just a little suggestion there. All right, so now let's really talk about the scoring. So like our one of the main concerns here was connecting the cascading octaves, somehow getting from here to there. Okay, well, there's a little bit of a hitch in this, that because the octaves don't really, like, I mean, I see how you're trying to set this up so that it's like, and so on. But like the thing about it is that, like, making this slurred across here, it's just a kind of a weird thing, like to slur across repeated notes and have those repeated notes further have like ornaments over them. So I think you've got some. You're kind of you're. This is sort of working at cross purposes. If you really want that daya 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 kind of idea, then I'd get rid of this, because like it's you're taking away the emphasis at the beginning of the note, right? So yeah, just get rid of those slurs. You don't need them, and then you get the back and forth kind of a sound, right? And this should just be like a going the wrong direction here. Everything's running really slow all of a sudden. Yeah, so it should just be one of these things, right? So like don't do tied eighths in this sort of compound meter, right? So everybody will understand what that means. Yeah, so rather than this. All right. Yeah, now this is just so gravelly down here. Yeah. So yeah, so like maybe it could just be the low strings, but then you've got like so much weight in the middle with even being really extra soft. Now this is this marking conspirato, like it's really more something that you would put under this, right? Here you're saying vigoroso, but like it is absolutely obvious that this is intended to be vigorous, right? Just from the way it's scored. Right, and here you're saying animato, so that's more of like a. I mean, yeah, it could be like an expression text, but it's really more of like a tempo kind of a thing, right? So you've got a lot of it's like you don't want to overdo it with giving instructions to your players. Just make the music have the instruction within it. The way that the music is written should be obvious enough to the player most of the time, right? So yeah, so we have this slow build forwards, right? And we just have a little bit of stuff happening here in the strings, and I feel just kind of with the way this is written, the strings are going to have to, like, they're like a lot of the what's going on in here in the brass is going to sort of be playing over them to a degree. But having said that, I do like the kind of nice brassy sound, that sort of more earthy quality right in here, kind of radiant. It's pretty nice. Yeah, I mean, couldn't this low G sharp been like? What if you had like first and second trumpets on top, and this were like a trombone part, like this were played. These kind of lower notes were covered by trombone, and then maybe you go to the third trumpet here. Just like that kind of, like, you want this to be absolutely beautifully delicate and nice and even and everything else, and like throwing in a tenuto on a low G sharp in C trumpet, that's just kind of not the most ideal sound. It's something that sounds a hell of a lot better in horn. It's a lot of stacking here, but you're building towards something bigger, so that's all right. Clarinet and bassoons and horns. Yeah, and then like by the time we get here to this massive scoring, mezzo forte pushing to forte and so on, pushing to sforzando, and then pushing to forte, it's Yeah, and then here you're saying vigoroso, right? You don't need that. Your scoring is already vigorous, right? It's gilding the lily, right? And here you have a tie or a slur across tenutos. So I'm wondering what, yeah, tie. So I mean, do you need that there? All right. But I mean, all that said, it's still pretty cool scoring. I like the I like the the sort of fluttering downwards. Maybe you don't need to have so much crescendo right away. Maybe the crescendo can start happening more around here and then pushing forwards in a more naturally balanced way. Why does it have to just really be a slow build all the way through? I know it says sempre crescendo at the beginning, but like we don't have to do that exact arc, right? Anyhow, this is all real cool in here, right? Yeah. So yeah, vigoroso. It is vigorous. It's already vigorous. Yeah. I mean, it's cool. I mean, I see what you're doing here with the harmony. It's not entirely evenly worked out across everything, but it's still pretty cool. Yeah, you're trying to get this, the kind of the contrary motion and everything. And yeah, I respect what you're trying to do here. It's just, yeah, and then you have you have a roll and a G on top of that, right? When the yeah, and then you're really slugging away on this A sharp, right? So there's just a lot happening in the bass. It's just really, it's not the clearest bass scoring right in there. Yeah, let me get rid of the keypad. All right. Yeah, wow. Certain commands are just taking a long time. Okay, so now we're kind of getting up to the big warm up to the massive tutti. And, like the leaping scoring here in certain like trombones, uh, low winds, a little bit from the low strings. Yeah, and like yeah, this works really nicely in just generating the excitement. Yeah, I'm not so sure about this two, right? I mean, like yeah, it is. I mean, it is in two, but it's actually eight. So I would just have this be eight. Just have like whatever the number of the what is the number of the beast here, right? It's eight, all right, against it's eight notes in the space of a dotted quarter note. Okay, so the only thing I kind of worry about here is that like the brass scoring gets kind of massive here, and there's a few strange things. Mezzo forte crescendo to mezzo forte. What if you put that in as a kind of a joke for me? But or maybe you intended this to be forte. I don't know. All right, so it's just it's really kind of middling dynamics right in here. But like the scoring is kind of massive, and then like following up, we have you have like this passionate scoring, right? And yeah, and look, appassionato, a vigor. Like we know it's there. It's right in the music. You don't need to tell us, right? And then like here, like you're writing out like the different glissando things. Just put in a harp diagram, right? It's just a little bit, and just it's kind of strange because like you've got this down here. It would probably be better in both parts or something. But like the probably the best thing of all is just to have like the bracket, or have the pedal marks with the little cross and the positions of the different pedals and so on. It's just at a glance, it's so much faster, according to the harpists I've worked with. Sometimes they want both. It just depends on the, just some for some clarification sometimes. All right, so here you're like going to measured tremolo. Okay, so you got to watch out for like this kind of slurred fingered tremolo. It can have a kind of a almost like a klaxon kind of a sound, like a car alarm going off. So I mean, it's really like what you scored here is like really more of a it's like more of a clarinet kind of a thing. You got bass clarinets and or bass clarinet and English horn that could probably pull this off way better, right? But yeah, but with horns, it's just really going to have like you know a very intense kind of a sound. Also like horn trills, right? They're also just have the most intense like it's has a kind of a almost a raggedy kind of a sound. Yeah, and so like there's a lot of weight in the bottom here, sort of pushing forward. You got pushing forward to like forte and tuba and so on, and then sort of thunk, 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 and then over it like really kind of mezzo dynamics in a lot of things. And yeah, I mean, I just feel like a lot of functions are working against each other in terms of their dynamic arcs right in here. The kind of the unity of the parts is like less clear. Yeah, I see what you're doing, like some certain things in opposition to one another, but like there's a danger that like the echo, you've got this ba ba, and then this high B coming in here on the top, right? It's sort of like question and answer, right? But like I feel that like doing this too much, like you don't really feel the dip, right? All right, so continuing on, let's look at the scoring of this really complicated, massive tutti part. All right, so really solid scoring in here, triple octave, oboes, and so on. It's a little inconsistent here and there, like, but I see like why, because like you're making room for like you're ripping up and then doing this and so on. So that's all really fun, and like it doesn't last for too long before the rest of the octave comes back in. So that's all pretty well advised, and quadruple octave and so on. I would be a little concerned about like who is doubling down here on this low this low viola note, right? And like your third and fourth horns are doing almost nothing, right? Could they be helping out down there? Because is there some way to make this a little bit more solid? Because like against this kind of power here, the kind of trumpeting around of the trombones and bassoons working together, and you just really are looking at a massive, massive sound here. And there is like really kind of a just really kind of a risk that it will just shout over everything that is going on in the like you can mark this fortissimo, right, in the strings and the winds and so on, but just the you have these pushes, forte, più forte. You don't need the più forte. That is built right into the hairpins, right? And then here you say sempre. Yes, so there's certain things that you can and cannot do, right? Like you can say sempre on articulation marks, and then like if it's all tenuto or all staccato, be careful about putting tenuto at the end of a tie. If it's all tenuto, whatever, like then you don't need to mark it tenuto in every bar. All right, like for instance here, like you've got in the bass trombone part and so on. This should be just a quarter note value, right, rather than a tied eighth note. You only need to tie like this when you're going across the beam groups. Okay, but you cannot get away with saying sempre on your crescendos. All right, write in all your crescendos. It's the same thing with like slurs. You can't get away with saying, oh yeah, just do the same slurs. Write them all in. All right? Write in all of your crescendos. Okay. And then, like here for the timpani, like I think you're trying to tell the player to not damp the G here. But the thing about it is that they're not going to have time to do that with the way that they're like they're going to be going. They're going to have two mallets obviously for the roll, so they're going to go bong, and then here you have the piano crescendo to the, and then so it's just you keep like dropping down and then increasing and dropping down and increasing and so on. All right, so like there's absolutely zero need to mark this with an LV tie because they just don't have time to damp that kettle, right? They're going to be hitting this and then just immediately going towards this roll. Also, once again, simplify this. This should be a quarter note tied to a dotted quarter note tied to a half note. Okay, all right. So, I'm not so sure. Like, all tenutos is the way here. Like maybe marcato accents, or just like, or just marking it forte marcato or something, right? Just because it's just sort of like everything is da 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 da. It's just like it's full. It is absolutely full notes with no nuance at all. It's just like blocks of notes, right? And whereas this, you kind of brought it down to an andante sostenuto rather than like the real pushing of the tempo, and so I mean it's more likely, but then it's sort of more draggy, right? Do you know what I mean? Yeah, but like one last little thing I would say in here is like that the who could be really helping out with the melody is the trumpets, right? Just that would firm everything up and it would solve a lot of problems in here. All right. So on this page we've got like the long fermata right in here, and that's fine. I totally approve. It's cool. Like if that gets used every once in a while and the context is great, and it's like that's. But you could also just do the standard fermata and just write lunga over it, or longa, right? So just like people know that to really take a breath there. All right, so we're continuing on. So here, like the horns and the trumpets finally do come in, and like I see why you're saving them up. It's like you want everybody to just start going nuts, right? However, dropping your violins down to a place where they can't be heard is probably not the greatest idea, right? I would say keep your violins up there and see if there is some little spare person who isn't doing something else who could possibly be doubling them here and there, right? So, like for instance, does this need to be like? Do these flute parts need to be A2? Could like maybe the flute and oboe parts maybe like you could keep it up there and you could have first flute doubling the top and first oboe doubling the bottom, and then the other players could just be playing these little furioso. So yeah, I mean, and it is pretty furious. I mean, here that's okay. Yes, Sombriac con Forza. Well, I mean, it is really like it is already there. That is already what it is, right? You kind of probably. I think con Forza is probably enough, but I mean, you've already got the accents and the intensity and everything else. Yeah, it's kind of fun these razzes that you've got in here. Yeah, so about the only thing that worries me here is that like you've had this bashing around here with your bassoons and trombones and things, and then you get to this point and like the where does the bashing go? It goes to much softer instruments, accented clarinets, and you're continuing on with bassoon and contrabassoon, and you are giving some of this over to the violin. So like in a passage like this, which by the way you don't have where I got half the information here because I don't know what dynamic this is, right? So is this forte? Is it fortissimo? What is it? Right? So like if let's say this was fortissimo, then and this were kept back up in its natural place, and you add some support by an extra flute and oboe player, you'd probably have to just expand how many staves you've got here, and so on. Let's say that we balance that, and then you marked like that like forte or even triple F, and you had the same thing happening with those supporting instruments and so on. Then I think you would get a balance. But like the way that it is now, I mean, you can hear it in the mock-up. The brass are basically blasting the winds and the strings out of the water. It's very hard to hear this, this really great dramatic, almost cinematic kind of, kind of scrubbing strings right in here. Yeah, and I almost feel like like the. I mean, it's almost a waste, but I see that like there are very few other options, like in terms of like who is helping out doing what. I kind of feel that like it could be a place like you've had your contrabassoon do such vigorous stuff up to this point. It would be nice if the contrabassoonist could just play the equivalent of footballs, whatever. They could be helping keep down some of this rock bottom stuff, right? Yeah, but one thing I just like comment about all of this is that like I've been seeing in a lot of interpretations, especially getting towards the end of the D section, is like there's a tendency to sort of simplify, use like try to keep the functions down to a minimum and so on, and you are just diving into it and adding functions on, right, and just really making it as complex as possible. And so, especially like with the motion of the double basses in here and so on. So like so if you're going to do that, if you're going to add more of those things, then you have to either make sure that it's balanced all the way throughout with some support in certain areas and experiment with that more. Or you have to lessen some of the functions, right? Just so that you get clarity, right? So there are some things that there's for instance, there are a few pages of the Prokofiev violin concerto that that are so complex with every single person on the page is doing something slightly different from somebody else, and it works beautifully because it just the cumulative cloud of ideas is just so incredible, right? But like this is kind of a more emphatic, more aggressive kind of thing, and like a lot of it is really set. So just really be careful how much more you bring in, and also be careful about leaving big gaps, right? Places where like the instruments could like if certain functions drop out, like the feeling of their drop could actually really be felt. So it might be better to just fill some holes from time to time. Yeah. And then like I almost feel like you would need an extra string section to make some of these flurries work, right? To support the winds. So while I approve of everything, and I went really wild with this section too, so I'm not really blaming you for adding more things. I think that's really, really great. Just make sure that all of the new functions balance. And this is so cool in here, basses, some low winds, horns, and yeah, and lower heavy brass, bum 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 bum. Yeah, and then that really wonderful chord you had on the next page, I had no problem with at all. Just except maybe balancing the strings with the horns a little. All right, so I mean, I hope that helps. It's just like this has got so much going on. It's really hard to pick apart and say this works with that better than this, and so on. There's just so much happening. But I mean, I hope that I gave you a bit of a guide as to like what might need to be supported a little bit more and what might get lost in the mix. Like for instance, you've got you've got these lower winds playing with accents and just really just digging in and going nuts. But and here like there's like no accented articulation or anything, right? You're saying furioso, but what does that mean? We could say marcato, and that might actually be better than furioso, right? Because then the players would just really play with a, or martellato would be better. Like then they play with a real hammering kind of bowing. Yeah, and be careful about diminuendo, right? Because it's supposed to be loud and then soften at the end, right? So this, once again, here's another score where we're seeing the end of D. There's some pianissimo, excuse me, there's some diminuendo even to pianissimo here in these parts, and even in anticipation when it's supposed to be non-decrescendo, right? It's supposed to keep up the energy, and then you have the illusion. You have to create the illusion of what happens when you are holding on to a piano key and you let go of the rest of the chord, right, with the pedal. Anyway, but just really, really cool. So let's jump back. I spent a hell of a lot of time on E and D. All right, so back to the beginning now. Um, we see, like, with affection, right? I mean, the thing is that, like, I think this is working against the character of the music here. There's a kind of a coolness to this, like, I mean, not unemotional, but like there's a sense of reserve, right? So I think if you say con effetto, like the players might try to play really, like, really expressively, when really it's more kind of backing off that they need to do. This is a nice combination: piano, flutes, pianissimo, clarinets. I think that's a really great balance for what you're trying to do there, having some low flute scoring. Yeah, and then but like when you start to bring in some horns right in here, like that's, I mean, even like you're just really trying to be really soft and you're pushing it into there and trying to be, like to not overplay, to not to outplay the second flute down there. Um, yeah, like English horn would play this just perfectly well, right? I mean, that's already getting the first two notes of that, and it could just continue on and just keep it, and also have almost a flute-like character, right? Now, like here you're saying third doubles piccolo. I think you should just have, like, considering the independence of the third flute part in general, you should just have a third staff. And if your third, if the piccolo is not doing anything, right, then you don't even have to have it here. Like if you weren't going, let's say you weren't going to take my advice and put in a third flute staff, then you wouldn't need the piccolo thing because we already know that third doubles piccolo. You can just say, you could say third or just even three period DBL period PICC period, right? So it should look like this. All right, just save yourself a little bit of space. Darn it. Things are just running really slow all of a sudden. Right, so that's just three double pick, right? That's all you need. And then you don't need this staff at all because we know that that's what's going to happen, right? Of course, you could just have an independent third staff, and you could put it below the first and second flute, and then you can have the piccolo above or on the same track as the third flute. It's up to you. But that way, it just saves you a lot of this one and two stuff, right? Okay, so as far as the whole goal of having emotional and timbral progressions and so on, and having an emotional story, I think that you are doing great with this. I'm not so sure that you need to, like, have quite so many surges, right? There's lots of surging going on, like for instance right in here and so on. I think this could be dialed back a little bit. I mean, I get the whole da da, but I mean, you might be able to get the same effect just like marking mezzo piano and then just take away the mezzo forte and then put a tenuto mark at the top of the second crescendo, right? And you can get rid of the mezzo piano too. So then the idea kind of comes through more, right? And then yeah, once again, like, who can fade down to the finest point? The horns probably can here, like in their middle register, and and then of course, like, you're not even asking the other players to get all that soft. It's a pretty cool opening, I've got to say, though. Yeah, I mean, affectionately, save the affection for later, right? Like, this is kind of cooler. It's it's kind of like early morning, waking up, staring out at the sunrise kind of stuff. It's that kind of thing. The air is still, right? It's not necessarily warm yet. Still, it's really nice scoring that you've got going on in here. This is really more of a second horn part right in here. Yeah, see, so you would, like, first and second would be sharing the G, right? Just having that really nice unison. And then here, this would be third, climbing around with the first, while this sort of more middle voice kind of part, or this sort of kind of from below part would be a really much better of a second thing. And I know, like, recently I've said, like, oh yeah, playing in thirds and everything like that. But like when you have an additional part like this, it really should be a second part, because that's also part of their job. Yeah, well, this is cool though, right in here, low horns, because you're going to go up to this and so on. Yeah, but like once again, this is a second horn part. This is a third horn part, right? So this should be swapped. And the same thing going down to this G. Would be better if your sort of second in command, your third horn player, were to play this, right? And then trading off down to the second, right? So I would just swap that. But yeah, a really cool first page. So I'm not going to have the chance to get into the same atomic detail that I did with sections E and D. But I mean, like I think with all of the stuff that you've seen me cover with other evaluations, I think you pretty much have a pretty good idea what I would be saying in general if I had 3 hours to go over everything. All right, so so now we're getting, and once again, Amabile. It is in the music, right? Anything that the music is already expressing, right? Yeah, some parts are marked espressivo and some aren't, right? So it's like a lot of information, espressivo and amabile, and this would actually be like it should be expression text if you are going to use it, but I don't think you need to use it. I like I like the way that you have the flowing patterns, or figuration, working its way through the lower winds. I like the tide notes. I think that's a very cool, like, kind of, it's using some of the sense of sustain from the piano. And about my only objection to this would be we're getting to a place where there's like a sort of a pedal D, and like you change that all around to be like more of an active bass line, right? So we sort of lose the impressionistic sense, right, of just everything is kind of hovering over that D and hovering over and hovering over, and how long can Barvinsky keep this going on all the way to the final, what should be E, right? But you don't have an E, you have a G, right? So yeah, so just watch out, like how much of the bass line can you change before the character of the music really, starts to mean something completely different. Yeah. So like the harp scoring in general, right in here, it's like some of it could work higher, like in terms of balancing, like bigger, gushier chords, and and higher placed octave melodies and so on, like taking everything an octave higher. But like stuff like this, it just really doesn't have much of a chance in lower down and so on. I mean, I get the intention. I think it's admirable, but I don't think that it's likely to be heard very well. And then this kind of stuff right down in here, even though everybody is softening up, the beginning of this harp part will pretty much not be heard. And then like right in here, there's a kind of a chance with everybody else just sort of shutting up. But then it's also got to play along with the rising winds and so on. It sounds like that sounded like a Creedence Clearwater lyric. And the rising strings right in here. Yeah, so just, most of the harp part is written kind of low in places. It's more of a piano part. Like it's really written more in places where it would get swallowed up by the things around it, even though they're beautiful and soft in a lot of places. Like for instance, this like you've got this, got these clarinets really surging out of the sound picture to forte and then down. So like just the impact of that surge along with, the push to mezzo forte here and so on in these other parts, even though you're keeping everybody else really soft, is just enough to sort of bury what's going on here. All right. So, and then, like we've got oboe and a flute working together. And, Alex, what are you doing scoring low flute right in there? That would be an oboe part, right? Or a clarinet part. Yeah, just, if you're going to push your violins up to mezzo forte, there's no way that this second flute is going to contribute meaningfully to the texture. It would be better for this to be A2, A2A, and then, like, if you really want more doubling on that pitch for your strings, that's what the second oboe exists for, right? Yeah. I mean, I have covered this a lot. I think you've heard me say it. Like here you're sending this all the way down to E and then A. What is it playing against? These nice loud clarinets, and the strings will just absorb everything anyway. Better to have oboe. Will actually achieve something, right? I'm gonna make everybody sign a paper saying that I will not score low flute where it can't be heard in the next challenge. That's okay. So somebody left a comment for me on a recent challenge saying, "Oh, geez, I know that, but I forgot." So it's all right, But like I gotta say, like just the really soft, little surgy brass right in here, I really love it, and I love the way that you are, like except for the bass line, like the some of the harmonic context that's being altered around. I really love like the kind of almost atmospheric brass that you've got in here working along with everything else that's happening, right? It's really lovely. All right, and then this was also great too, like how like it all kind of started to coalesce with the strings becoming more active, helping out the winds here, and the way the flute started to rise in here, kind of playing off of what was happening before with oboe and so on, second violin. I just really liked that, and then like just with the richness of the brass right in here, and maybe not so many not so many mezzo dynamics, kind of stuff like this. Just piano crescendo to mezzo forte. There's just a lot of mezzo in this, I'm noticing. But, like a lot of like going back and forth between mezzo forte, mezzo piano, mezzo forte, mezzo piano, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and this is just really, really nice. And you know what? Like, if you do not fade out with your brass here, along with everybody else's fade out, you are obscuring the beauty of this rising harp and the wandering melody, right? Okay, and then that's just really lovely. And the way the second flute comes in here, so that's good. That's really great second flute scoring. And that just the way that this chord is all set up. It's really beautiful. Right. And then, having the harp take more of a role here. Yeah, and, once again, I'm just not quite so convinced, folks, about, like about adding too much accompaniment to Berlioz, to Barvinsky's wandering lines, like like sort of harmonizing it with a bass line and so on. I think the lines that wander are meant to wander, and they're meant to sort of land in places where the listener doesn't quite know exactly where they're going, right? So so if we sort of tell them all the time with bass lines and harmonies and things like that, maybe we're subtracting from that wonderful sense of just intimacy that just getting down to just nothing and just being nothing but just this line that is moving, and then it lands in the next place. So yeah, with this last screen that we're going to look at, you probably know already what I'm going to say, and that is that like the cascading lines are almost completely absent, and like you've changed it to sort of like a kind of a line that kind of goes up and down and up and down, and on the lower winds and so on. So yeah, so like it doesn't really solve that puzzle, and I mean it doesn't have to. It's fine, but yeah, I mean it just I was hoping to see you try to solve that problem. One thing that I will say about this is that there's you know one thing about that, as simple as the C section is, it is lush with harmony in the piano part, and a lot of the harmony has just really been taken out, and I just really feel its absence. You know. Yeah. Are we giving too much of a preview of what's coming up, like a more thunderous approach to the timpani in later bars? Still, I do like that. I like this motion in here. It's very fun. But I would say that like since you kind of did have remember your sempre crescendo from a while back, we kind of already had something like that, didn't we? And in the piano part, in the piano score, the crescendo really just kind of comes in like right in here, right? So maybe is there a way of scoring this using the same approach so that like we just kind of have this slow burn, right? This kind of slow kind of sizzle or simmer of the elements that just start to give pressure and give pressure and give pressure and then back off here, right? So that we don't have too many long, like there are already a lot of long crescendos in this. And conspirito, like, I mean, what are we saying when this is conspirito and this is like sul tasto pianissimo and so on, right? Um, I mean, yeah, I was just saying, watch out for adding too many comments. It's sort of like in playwright class or playwright workshops. One thing that playwrights learn to not do so much is to give their characters too much direction, like in the in the text of the play, right? So they'll have like they'll say character one, angrily in parentheses, and then the text of the line they're supposed to say, and then the character two, parentheses timidly, then what they're supposed to say, right? So I think the music itself is telling you what it is, right? So conspirito, I would associate conspirito with like a march, right? Where you are proud of what you are doing, and you just like you have spirit, right? You are just really standing up for something, or that is, But like this is more of a like what is the character of this in the piano score? It is there is kind of like kind of the simmering octaves happening underneath, and then above there's this calm surface, right? So I see it more as of a kind of a calm section, right? I would save my spirit for the middle of the D section, right? So there's a possibility that some of your instructions may misguide or misdirect some of the action. Yeah, so sul tasto. So there's probably a big chance that the winds, the way that you've scored them here, will completely overwhelm the strings. Especially sul tasto being kind of a softer, chestier kind of a sound, and this being very, very bright, the way you've scored, like oboe and flute doubling here, and like the second flute gets a little low here, but that's fine. It's just it's all working great, and then you have like the octave doubling, the octave scoring doubling in flute and oboe, and I think that all works great. Okay, and there's really nothing obtruding too much in the brass or the strings or whatever that would like wipe out the, like, of course the oboe will wipe out the lower flute, but not too much, like, and especially not at these softer dynamics. Yeah. I mean, it just, you use you kind of have an impressionistic brush with some of your brass scoring. What Debussy always said, don't blare. You know, why do brass ever have to blare, right? And, you listen to his scoring in La Mer, and La Mer doesn't blare, right? Or maybe not very much. Yeah, in here, like, we got like mezzo piano crescendo to mezzo forte. Maybe you don't even need the mezzo forte marking, right? Yeah, because it's sort of implied, right? But yeah, but like, if you can hang on to like the meaning of things like Barvinsky's, the way he puts like the pedal on the dominant underneath the music, and then everything just sort of kind of arcs and cascades around it and changes meaning and changes subtlety, then I think you would really have like the matching of some of your impressionist tendencies will just really get strengthened by that. Okay. Yeah. So, anyways, like without having like 3 hours of coaching with you, I think that's as much as I can say on this score. Okay, it's just a great, phenomenal effort. It reminds me a bit of George Owen's score from that I evaluated yesterday, when it was released yesterday, in the timeline of these releases, and yeah, that there's so much going on, and there are so many things to kind of sort and to look after and to balance one against another, many different functions happening and so on. So it's almost more than I can possibly cover in the detail that it deserves, right? Like, I could spend half an hour just talking about this one screen, right? So but that's no reason why you should spend any less time being as complex and as imaginative as you want to. You send me whatever score you feel like orchestrating. Don't pull any punches, right? And I will just give you what I can in the time that I've got. All right. So just keep following that. Your wonderful, dreamy, complex style. I think it's really really important. But simplify things. Crescendo poco poco. You don't need the dashed line, right? We know you're headed for this. All right. So great work, Alex. Just phenomenal effort, and I hope that my effort at being a good coach came up to anywhere near the level of the effort that you put into this. Fantastic work. So yeah. So everybody, like, um, just something else to tell about Alex is that he's been very very active in giving people feedback about their orchestration challenge entries. So thank you so much for that, Alex. And I hope that you get everything that you put into it in terms of feedback and positive energy and fair fair critique if there's some thing that like you may have forgotten to do, or some way that you could improve one aspect or another beyond what I've said, or whatever. Somebody might have like a different perspective on what I've said and completely disagree, but thanks again for being a part of this and for all the great energy you've had and all of the support that you've given to the channel over the years, and also especially for this particular very meaningful challenge where we had a chance to help some people who desperately need it. Really means a lot. Thank you so much. And thanks out there to everybody else supporting on Patreon, to all of my subscribers, to everybody who's still watching this video after all this time and hasn't turned it off yet and is madly, passionately hammering away at their keys, at the keyboard on their computer, and leaving their own comments. I appreciate it. Thanks to everybody. And I will see you tomorrow for more of these great videos. Hang on, folks. I'll see you then.